I hope I am not forgetting anything. Here I am. Here we are. Sorry. Ah, you have to refresh right now. Which thank you. Anyways, amazing. I think so. By the way, Peter. I would say better later than sorry. So sorry. I even or just shut up. Just because I want to see if we can tener problem start in terms of with yeah not the only real reason is not having ads in the middle of everything else. Wait, I can start the timer. Nice. Anyways, completely anyways. Ah, haha. Anyways, I guess. Uh, what a what a good thing to have to manage everything by yourself and to forget to do that. Nice, I guess. I don't know. But well, uh, yeah, I am still sleepy. It took me so much to wake up. What? Ah, I I have such a hard time waking up. Also, I just remember. I think I can turn off the light in my house. Okay, no, for real. Here I am. I don't even know how they noticed that. I think probably a random meme, something like that. Perhaps that's what. Yeah, me remembering to turn it off, but well. Ah, ah. There isn't also any music. What's up with me? What? I am too sleepy to function properly. I have that excuse. Don't tax me anymore. Thank you. Damn. What what a nice beginning, I guess. Ah, regardless, um, completely regardless, I guess. I don't know. At this point, I forgot so much stuff. I am really not forgetting anything else. Like, yeah, it will not surprise me if something of the utmost importance. I ended up also forgetting seeing how this is uh, going. Let's say. But yeah, anyways. Sorry. Should we proper? Should it's okay. It fits perfectly, I think. Yeah, it's completely perfect. So that's that. Oh yeah, I shouldn't be forgetting anything. I guess. Uh, yes. I don't know. I wouldn't have expected to not have so many things to deal with, while at the same time failing so hard on others. But yeah, I don't know. Anyways, regardless, was I was thinking, yeah, I said before, I did change a little bit how much it takes until we fully start and all of that, and it is quite useful to wait a little bit so that we get rid of the career roles and all of that. At the same time, uh, I don't know what to do with that much time. Like, I don't know, 9 minutes of me simply talking. I can do that, but in the sense of what is the meaning? That I don't know. I guess once again, the main objective is to avoid being with being dealing with the ads and all of that in the middle of saying hello and such as to it doesn't even get rid of the career roles. That is weird, man. I hate that fact. It is like it has the possibility of getting rid of them, but it doesn't automatically do so. Like it almost makes you feel bad. Not really bad, but rather as if you were scamming to get people summed with the career roles, if you don't consciously deactivate them every single time, like, what? Why is that the way in which it works? Why did Twitch decide that it was okay to do so in that order or in that particular way? I don't, I really don't get did they mean by that? But regardless, that besides, it at the very least, um, as always, we are here. I said I was sleepy. I didn't even think I was going to wake up. Uh, it was an incredibly good night, even I would say. I don't know why they have such a. Well, yeah. On one hand, I do know I was quite anxious. Not yeah, maybe anxious, maybe anxious in the sense of being full of energy. Let's say it like that. And it was quite weird to have to calm down and go to sleep early so that we can be here, you know? But yeah, that being said, I I didn't even get to sleep that much. It was weird also. There was so much noise and so much stuff going on. Like I think I got woken up probably like 3 times throughout the night. It was weird due to the noise. And well, today it wasn't really hot. It isn't cold anymore, but it wasn't really hot, so at least that wasn't a problem. But yeah, anyways, also, I am not checking. I am properly speaking into the mic. I mean, no, right? Yeah, I am not. Audio level, my beloved, my dear and most beloved problem. Why do I have to? What is it? Channel my voice when I am speaking. What is the point of doing that? Why I can't simply go and not even think about what I am saying? But anyways, I guess if it has to work like that, it is understandable, and I will try my best to do it properly so that it isn't a problem anymore. But yeah, regardless, I guess. Uh, much time do we have left? No more. At the very least, I checked exactly in time. Hello, hello, people. Welcome. After after quite a bit, we are so back. We are in the highest stratosphere of being back, I would say. Um, yeah, I don't know. Hello, welcome. Uh, it's been quite a long time, certainly, and it is quite fantastic to see that we get to continue doing something after I don't know, like a month, 2 months almost of not even trying to, in this case, learn anything. So yeah, that is quite amazing. I guess we can finally try to finish this whole study thing, you know? I I do not even know yet what will be next, but anyways, regardless of that, as always, hello, thanks for being here. Um, welcome everybody, welcome viewers, lurkers, pod watchers also. Um, hi, thanks for your time, I guess. And yeah, basically that. As always, after a little bit of talking, after a little bit of thinking of time to ease ourselves into what is truly going to happen, after a little bit of that, we are going to start studying. Um, I don't know. I gave myself, or I tried to give myself 2 hours to work with that. I think based on the proposition that we watched those lessons at 1.25 by itself already, and also based on the idea that we make a lot of stops um, or pauses to think about what is being said and such. We will see how it goes, but I hope we have more than enough time to finish that properly. I I wish to believe it will be enough. I don't think it truly needs to take that much more time. But yeah, just in case we could even start earlier in terms of not doing like 1 hour of purely talking. But I don't know. I don't think it will be necessary to rush it that much. Um, it truly has no need to be rushed. And I mean, not only that, but also taking into consideration that if we were to do something of that sort, how weird it would be to realize that we are probably going to finish the lesson itself and have incredible amounts of free time to do nothing. And like, I get the idea of, let's say, simply just continuing. On one hand, I get it. On the other hand, it is weird to, after doing our main thing, let's say, uh, completely switching off onto something else of a different nature altogether. So yeah, I I guess that is another. I will call it that. Yeah, another useful excuse to not think about why or why not is it that we are in any way whatsoever um, rushing to get to the study part of this. And I mean, we also have the division of categories and all of that to guide ourselves around. When do we start and such? So that is already more than enough, also. And yeah, regardless, anyways, I don't know. I I do have quite a hard time coming up with anything to properly mention. I am I'm not mentally. I was going to say I'm mentally exhausted. No, not in that sense. I am mentally blank. I have been doing a lot of, yeah, let's say like that. I have been doing a lot of things and I have been putting a lot of stuff together. And it has been quite wonderful to do so. But at the same time, it does cost a little bit of uh, focus on everything else, let's say. So it ends up being a rather common consequence that right now I am not barely, but in a sense, I am capable of only holding one idea in mind in the present, as it was rather necessary to enter into that mode of over focusing or just focusing on one particular thing, and everything else should be ignored for the sake of completing that goal. But yeah, it is going, and it certainly is arriving somewhere. I will say so. With that in with yeah, with that itself said, I'm more than satisfied already. Even if so far I haven't even started organizing the rest of the things, and I mean, putting your time into organizing so many stuff is certainly crazy. Even more because you see how much you need to repeat some processes and how much automation it is possible to achieve, but at the same time it is not facilitated to anybody. It is like very, yeah, a lot of rudimentary systems exist in place of the structures that you commonly use, but they don't truly allow for the not the expression of the self in terms of you can't do stuff and enjoy doing it. It is more like you can try to do stuff but don't have the chance of organizing it fully by itself, let's say. So you end up needing to go manually and correcting everything so that it falls into place and that it ends up being more or less um, yeah, on where it should be, doing what it should be doing, you know? So, yeah, I don't know, I guess that, but it simply is just a way for me to complain, I guess, to talk about it in that sense. After all, not always. It is a necessity to try and consider so much uh, everything else. It just happens that you don't get all the chances to be um, yeah, to be so organized. So it feels weird once you realize that when you're trying to do something of that sort, it is harder by itself because you have to deal also with a lot of stuff from other places that is really not in your hands, I guess. But anyways, I don't know, I don't know. Regardless, I will say it. Yeah, moving onto something different. I not truly different. Sorry, it will be a lie if I said that it is truly different. After all, I once again very narrow-minded lately, so I can only go into what I had been doing as of yesterday, literally to find any particular topic to properly mention and to not have to struggle with proper sentence forming and all of that inner work. So yeah, I was thinking, let's start. No, let me drink some water. I am dying here. Okay, now for real. I was thinking. I was observing. I was wondering um, lately about this whole process of creating and such. And in the process of doing so, I ended up almost unavoidably coming in contact with the fact that you certainly can say a lot of things about a lot of different stuff in a very short span of time. And it feels weird to see how little that is fully taken advantage of by, I feel like by everybody. It doesn't truly make sense that we don't regard the capacity of, I don't know, in 2, 3, or even 1 minute, hearing something or saying something meaningful enough so that anybody else can use what you said to their advantage. And it does feel, once again, it does feel strange to see how much of a possibility there is for that, while at the same time it never being fully taught to anybody. It was to a certain extent. And I guess you can always say it comes because we lack the proper education to understand the necessity of communication and this whole side of proper communicate. I think it is communicative skills and all of that reality in which we never fully did. Yeah, we are never fully taught how useful it ends up being to learn how to become a better, more articulate human being in terms of speech and all of that. And I, I guess only once you encounter, or yeah, once you accept the possibility that sometimes you will find yourself hearing something such a short amount of time that might even stay with you for so long that it truly is not only something wonderful by itself, but rather something that even not even that anybody can take advantage of, and that everybody should be encouraged to do so. Like communication at the end of the day is simply the process in which you establish the process of talking with somebody else. As long as you're capable of talking, as long as you're capable of thinking and forming coherent sentences together, it is something that you can train, and it feels once again weird to encourage having these long discourses in which nothing of true meaning is said, or where the possible meaning of what tries to be conveyed ends up being lost because you need to add so many filler words and similar things. And I don't know, I can get the side of, well, this is going to be hard and this is going to be com- complex by itself to achieve because you are certainly trying to force the process of communicating to anybody in a way in which you are almost making it feel as if you truly had the chance of, let's say, by manner of words or by the order of what you are talking about, truly going to change anybody's life. The expectation itself shouldn't be to become the most influential human being in terms of, yeah, of saying things. It isn't from that sense, but rather from the comprehension of maybe if I can make it easier on the listener and I can communicate what I want to in a more proper manner, I should try to do so. After all, I think everybody understands to some degree how important it is our time in life and our time in existence, as in maybe by not having to hear what can be conveyed in 5 minutes throughout a whole hour, by not having to hear that, you can obtain not only the knowledge that you're looking for, but also the time itself, and you can be free to continue with your life for those minutes that might as well give you the possibility of once again changing the way in which everything else ends up working later on. I mean, you never know. That is also something weird that we never have full into perspective how important can 5 minutes be, even less a whole hour be. how much you can truly learn, how much you can truly change in 5 minutes end up being, at least for me, now, in this present moment, I wouldn't say fully revealed, simply exposed as yet another thing that you can work on, and yet another thing that can get you a lot of useful results that you wouldn't expect so much from, based on the amount of minimal awareness that is there for that process itself, you know? But yeah, I don't know. I guess speak more efficiently, not speak less, because it means nothing, or it even is detrimental to say speak less if you already speak little with other people. Eh, Speak more efficiently, man. It is possible to do so, and it seems quite imperative to do so once you realize how capable of doing it anybody is. But yeah, anyways, into something else. Thank you. I was sorry. Also, I didn't want to unmute. Sorry, I didn't want to mute. My bad. Completely my bad. But I guess yeah. That is part of the experience. You can say you can justify it as that. I don't know. Um, I was thinking. I was into into my own little world, and I found myself with something yesterday exactly. Also, it happened that I went to sleep, and I have like 10 hour sleep, and I don't even get what what happens there because I was talking about it with my family, and no, in reality I didn't even really talk about it. I simply mentioned that I slept like 10 hours, and it feels weird to see how normalized we have it to have people who truly oversleeps, and how much more even in the cases in which insomnia is so prevalent that we don't even say how damaging it is for them to not even get their full 8 hours of sleep. But the point is, we were talking about that, and nobody ever mentioned that it is quite unhealthy and that it can, as always, no, one of the main things that always comes to my mind in terms of hearing anybody say, "Wow, I sleep so much, I enjoy sleeping," unless you can articulate properly why do you enjoy sleeping, it ends up being a sad reality that most people simply like sleeping, quote unquote, because it is yet another coping mechanism to this thing that is called being alive, you know? I mean, it makes sense after all. The dreams that you can have can be so utterly relieving that it always is better to pursue something of that sort based on the amount of pleasure that you gain from them than to truly utilize your time in anything else that takes so much energy and whatever. So I get that side on one hand, but on the other, once again, this isn't really the reality of most people. The big majority of those who say, "Yeah, I like sleeping 10 hours," is, and I guess that is part of talking from experience, is simply that you say it because you don't need to justify to anybody else why do you really sleep so much, and why are you avoiding so many things like being asleep is one of the best excuses that you can have, because we see it as something so important that we don't really tell each other how harmful it ends up being to overdo it, and we also don't even try to mention to those who I don't truly know. We believe we appreciate, we say that we appreciate how, yeah, how negative of an impact it is going to have on them to continue holding this type of custom their lives. And as well, how much of an ignorance is there sadly in terms of if you're already sleeping 10 hours every single day, you might as well be already depressed to a certain extent. Once again, no? Uh, the avoidance of responsibilities don't come out of no. It doesn't happen just because you say that one day, oh yeah, you know what, I will sleep 10 hours one day, and from there on, you adapted to do that completely as if nothing ever truly changed. No, the average body not only doesn't need 8 hours, it needs even less than that to keep functioning. And the older you grow, the less you even need. So it ends up being revealed with enough time that it doesn't work in that sense. But people seems to once again find it weird or something of that sort once you mention, well man, you shouldn't be sleeping so much. You shouldn't be doing that, and you shouldn't be even encouraging other people to do so. In terms of, as always, because that is also something that I was thinking about, in terms of a habit, in terms of making it something completely normal, something that you always do, um, it is understandable, it is more than acceptable, and even expected to see somebody fall asleep for, I don't know, 10 hours, 12, if they are tired enough, even 20, 24 hours. It all depends on the exertion that the body has inside of itself. But the average human being doesn't even experience a quarter of the tiredness needed to justify having to sleep for 10 hours every single day, to need to rest that much. And the weird factor is, once again, we have it so integrated that we don't even fully comprehend why it happens, because in own judgment we can fully disregard what I am going to say in that sense, as it might be clouded by the interest of never fully accepting the problems of the self, let's say. um, you never know if it doesn't work in that sense, and you never understand if what you say doesn't work in that order, so that you don't have to, in any particular way, um, think about what's up with you. So I don't know fully that, but I believe in my case it didn't even happen that I was fully tired or fully, yeah, because tracing back a little bit, the most predominant predicting factor as to why somebody will sleep for 10 hours is this whole reality of having a little bit of depression, sadly. So you never know if that is what's happening. But I do believe it wasn't something like that. I mean, once again, if you have depression, you don't even feel like doing anything. I wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't be continuing with life in general if that were to be the reality. On one hand, and on the other one, the yeah, the reality itself of the dreams wasn't something utterly depressing or in any way revelatory, so that you end up having those things in which you say, or in which you learn how different it ends up, not different, how warped it is, the dreamland. It simply happens that, yeah, I don't even know, man. I think I don't want to also once again accept that somehow you will tire yourself out so much that out of nowhere, from having a completely normal sleeping schedule, you will jump up to 10 hours of sleep just because you decided to push yourself a little bit. And I mean, I think I think I can see that a lot of things happened on Sunday. Yeah, but at the same time, it wasn't even Sunday, it was Monday. It was on Monday. Yeah, but anyways, yeah, a lot of things happened on Monday, And all of those kind of justify the, the lack of energy. I don't think so. Once again, I just observed that and I say, wow, weird, I guess. After all, it never stops being weird in that sense. Even more, i- after you regain your normality and such, and out of nowhere find yourself in the hands of such an irregularity. But I mean, I sadly, I can get it. There is, once again, there is nothing as pleasurable as going to sleep and sleeping. I think there is few things that feel as good as sleeping when you can do it properly. So it ends up being almost a kind of addiction. And I remember even hearing once the story of of this guy who was so much in love with sleeping that he literally pushed himself. I think it was like when he was a teenager or when he was a very young adult to become kind of rich and all of that, just so that he could, after obtaining all the money, not have to worry anymore and sleep like, I don't know, 14 hours a day. And it makes sense, man. If I had the possibility, I will literally do the exact same thing. But yeah, it is still is. Once again, go back into this. It is weird that we don't talk about it enough. I feel like it certainly is something of importance in life and something that we don't address enough when it can become a problem. You only mention it as something, wow, it is so good for recovery and it is so good for anything that you might not want to lack sleep or to slack on sleeping properly because you don't know if doing so is going to be um, so hurtful for you or not. And I mean, I even remember that other side of the discussion. It even is weird to see that we push so much a narrative in which it is so important to have enough amounts of sleep when in reality it is going to be completely unavoidable for almost everybody at some point or another to lose their sleep. Like, a part of the anxiety that gets made on people when they can't go to sleep comes from the notion itself of I should be asleep at this point and I am yet somehow not being capable of falling asleep. What is going on? And what am I failing to do? Because it should be right now happening that I should be fully asleep, yet somehow I am not. So, can I please fall asleep? That part of the anxiety is fully understood at this point, I wish to believe, and is fully, yeah, fully explained as something obviously negative and something that obviously should be avoided. But we don't even mention that enough. We keep having a world in which, oh no, you are a young kid. You're going to die because you didn't get your 8 hours of sleep every single day in the past 365 days. What? It is impossible to have a completely regular sleeping schedule like that. I mean, it is one of those things that do you live in this world? Do you experience being alive that you really wish for everybody to be so capable of ordering themselves and organizing everything around sleep? It is fundamental and it is quite necessary and quite a primordial need. Okay, understood. But it doesn't mean that you can abandon everything else in order to fall asleep. Or that, for example, the process of falling asleep, we don't even get fully how it happens. Like, there has been yet no proper explanation that can be translated and used into daily life at the very least. On the topic of how can you even get to fall asleep consistently enough, and there is no process or no tool that can fully give you those, yeah, those tools themselves that allow you to, whenever you feel like it, whenever you notice that you are needing it, go to sleep, man. And I don't know, in 1 minute or two, be fully asleep. We sadly haven't developed something like that yet. So I don't know. It's weird, but I at the very least, at the very least, we have some minimal notions about it, and from there on, we can keep going into everything else that is of a bigger importance, I guess. After all, you can say very much sleep, while still regarded as something important, is luckily enough not regarded as the most important thing of importance in the life of everybody. We are still more focused on more solvable matters like, I don't know, having peace in your daily life and such. So with that, one gains the satisfaction of knowing that we are not dealing bad, we are not struggling so much with those problems and such. But yeah, unavoidable, I guess, completely unavoidable to think about it. And I mean, something completely different, sorry, but that I was also thinking about in terms of sleeping and such. Uh, it ends up being also weird how much of a lack of understanding there is about it because I hate, for example, when I wake up completely tired, but not when I wake up tired and I will keep being tired the rest of the day. It is like there is this, going back to video games or tracing this into a video game example. You go to sleep with every single one of your, what is it, resource bars quite empty. Let's say at the half point of everything of thirst and hunger, and the only thing that you replenish is sleep, but everything else ends up getting so low that once you wake up, you lack like, I don't know, 20% of your energy, and we don't even talk about it enough because it is like accepted that people simply goes back to sleep to try and heal that off from themselves. Like, let's say you sleep enough and you replenish your energy so that you are once again capable of functioning without any debuff coming from sleeping. But if you keep sleeping, you will reach a buff of, let's say, I don't know, 20% that simply patches up the lack of energy that you have for not having enough resources once you wake up. And once you wake up, you will unavoidably need to go and eat something. If you truly want to keep going throughout the day, and if not, it ends up being okay to not even think about that side of the action that goes in life and the need to once again satisfy those needs. It, it is okay to not even say to other people, you you will have those things going on and those parts of life happening to you, and you can fully ignore them, or either way, you can properly decide to act upon them and to, in this case, to keep existing and to keep going with your day with as much energy as possible instead of suffering so much that you end up taking up a longer route and even, yeah, in the whole summatory, not of days, probably of weeks or months, and how much more, even years, you end up losing not hours, days of your life doing that. And yeah, but probably in a manner of months, you end up losing days. In a matter of years, you end up losing weeks, entire weeks, because of a lack of awareness on that mechanic, let's say, because it does work like that. And I don't know. I guess we do live once again in a world in which it is accepted to avoid pain as much as possible, because it somehow became the worst thing possible for anybody to feel any kind of um, problem, any kind of lack of energy or whatever. It is like it happens like that, and you don't have to even believe that you can solve that. You simply have to ignore it, and you have to keep going with your life and try to not even pay attention to what you might be capable of doing. And I don't know, man. It is quite stressful if you do give it enough of an importance. And once you decide to not make it seem so much, yeah, as something unavoidably real, in that, let's say it in sense of you will go through bad things, but you can't always avoid the bad things themselves, because sadly that is not only a bad thing by itself, but also it will bring you to a world in which the amount of problems that are going to keep happening to you is going to be even bigger than before. And this case, if you don't even properly try to learn about how sleeping works, in the whole accumulative sum of problems that end up being born out of your improper acting, let's say, and not improper because you even can't correct it, but simply because you don't know better, in that kind of acting, you end up learning with enough time that you have sacrificed so much, and that you ended up creating for yourself so many troubles that could have been easily avoidable with enough information. That is, it ends up once again looping back into this whole idea of sadly, nowadays we don't preach hard enough the importance of learning about things that transition your daily life, man. How amazing it is to have hope in being capable of fixing the tiniest and daily events of your life. I, I, I don't understand what is the necessity of being so prepared for something like, I don't know, a tsunami if you don't even live near a beach or a river or a sea or whatever, while at the same time ignoring completely the real importance of, in this case, we're talking about sleeping. You can transition that into, I don't know, properly eating, properly consuming information, whatever. It feels weird, but I don't know. I guess even if it feels weird, it doesn't mean that you can't work on that by yourself and get that fixed in order to not have to deal anymore with the original problem that is the lack of some kind of a skill in any particular way, you know? So, I don't know. I guess simply being annoyed at something that is annoying by itself because you realize it is just part of doing things. Let's say going with what you wish to do. So, yeah, I don't know. I completely don't know. Water. You know what? That is what I need to drink some water, because in this whole idea of I have a low resources, I have something that I have drank stuff, still lacking hydration. I following that idea of you should try to like 3 hours after the last liquid consumption that you have. Following that, I have such a hell. If I am not constantly consuming liquid, I feel weird already. So, anyways, here we are. So, we're closing in. You're slowly getting there. I think like a little bit less than 10 minutes, and we can finally start learning stuff. Continue with this. I mean, I thought we had this one, but it ended up being different reality. We have still two tomorrow. I mean, this and another video to watch, and after that, we will then finally be done with this whole ordeal of watching and learning and whatever else. So, on one hand, it is going to be harder. On the other, it is going to be something worth expectating. Sorry. Um, Also, welcome, Savannah. Good evening, I think it is. Uh, Hello, welcome. We are simply, so far, simply talking, really. Not nothing else, nothing out of the ordinary. I guess, seeing just what's up before I can fully move onto into the video watching itself, I guess. Have this already. I don't want to deal with this later. Uh, we have this, we have that. Man, it is 1 hour and 7 minutes. Please tell me that. Yeah, okay. 1 hour and 7 minutes might as well be 2 hours and a quarter. So I am pretty sure we are not going to have enough time to watch this today. So, in order to try and accomplish, at the very least, I don't know, 75% of the consumption of this video, allow me to start slowly getting everything set up. I wished more to have just 1 hour, one whole hour of pure talking before, as always, to acclimate ourselves into the video, not be so out of nowhere directly into. It. I understand the idea of not, yeah, not jumping right into what you wish to do. It feels weird to do so, and it even more if you are coldly ignoring everything else. It does have a sense of weirdness around it when you don't even take enough time to get right. And I mean, I also have the excuse of because I just wake up, I need like an hour to properly, fully wake up so that I can deal with stuff like this one. So, anyways, yeah. Um, Here I have the video. Let me see. Uh, First, why is this thing? Okay, that's is there. Okay, that is finally centered. I don't know why there were some pixels, literally like 11 pixels off to the center. No, not off to the corners. Center to the corner. So that is done. Yeah, I think nothing else. I can fully switch into this. So, anyways, let me see. Wait. As always, no. just in case. Copy this into here and into paste. Yeah. Pin, pin. Yeah, I want to. Thank you. I think they pin themselves as after every single stream, supposedly. So yeah, there it is. That. What else? Nothing else. I hope so. So yeah. Anyways, uh, we will start with this. I didn't expect that it was going to be so long. I mean, as always, I don't check properly stuff beforehand, so I didn't know it was going to be so long. Excuse me. But anyways, we have to watch this. The lesson lecture 23. Uh, Short introduction because it has been like I was checking that it has been months since the last one. Uh, what we have here is basically a course about psychology, an introduction to psychology, not a real in deep course about one topic of psychology, an introduction to one side of psychology, and mostly the most surface level knowledge out of if a lot of different areas about in general what is the field itself that ends up being the psychology bit clinical or scientific or whatever. So yeah, from there on, we're analyzing uh, what can be extracted from this, I guess, and the lessons and all of that that can be obtained from properly observing this knowledge. So yeah, I don't know if I should take a look. I mean, the problem is because it is a lecture, it has no background sound. It shouldn't represent a problem. Have a, yeah, to have the clock speaking the background, but yeah, just in case, let me mute this. Thank you. So that in place, and with this also okay. We should be fine to move to the proper course. Thank you. I mean, it was still going to take me time to set it up. Why didn't I start early? Anyways, I don't know. Too many questions that I can't ask. Ask later, basically. So goodbye. Let's start watching this. Thank you.
So last time we talked about sort of spectacular things about human nature in terms of problems with or difficulties when we overly obey, when we're overly conformist, and the tendency for us to do that much more than we imagined we would. And the experimental evidence is pretty powerful. That is true. You could call that the dark side of things like obedience and conformity. The upside is that's how we work together and get along as a society. And today I'm going to focus more on individual everyday experiences. But again, I think you'll see yeah.
We got a lot of stuff into mind after, yeah, as I said before, months of doing the last episode. Also, wait. Something like. In this was the category, supposedly it should work like that, okay. Uh, Anyways, as I was saying, uh, we had a lot of things to bring back and to refresh ourselves with what was going on. We were analyzing and we were dealing with a lot of things in terms of how people work and how, in general, the average human being is expected to react to a lot of situations. For example, here, as in last analysis, it was there that we finally saw also how, in a lot of ways, somebody ends up being um, capable or not of properly doing what they should, and why is it also that in many occasions, the more people present observing, the less people capable of really acting help if it is necessary for them to do so. Um, so yeah, in general, it was based as the professor said, around the introduction, the presentation of people doing things and the people being people, that seems interesting to analyze already. So yeah, basically yeah, human behavior. I will describe it in a shorter manner. Human behavior and the expected things. I I guess not that much more. Continuing.
In terms of self-concept and impressions of others. Those are more everyday kinds of things, but you see how they populate our lives, how we think about ourselves, how we think about people in everyday interactions. Impressions of others. We talked a little bit, just a little bit, about cultural differences. Our course has been very focused on American, European type cultures. We talked a little bit about different ones. I'll say a bit more about that. And then I'll talk about maybe the most thought about disorder of social interaction, autism. So enhancing our views of ourselves, okay? So most US college students rate themselves as better than average students, all right? So you could sit there in your chair and you could go, no, I'm a pretty modest person, but really I'm probably better than the average student, right? And by the way, I'll tell you, faculty are the same, okay? So 1 million high school students rated their leadership ability in one example. 28% they said they were average. 70% rated themselves as above average in leadership, right? You understand that. Only 50% could be at most above average, or 49, right? Only 2% said they were below average. 60% of the high school students of these millions said they were in the top 10% in the ability to get along with others, okay? All right? Now, and by the way, just in case you think it's picking on students, 94% of college instructors rated themselves as better than average teachers. So whether you're sitting there or you're standing here, we all polish our image to ourselves. And we can decide, is that a bad thing? Is that vanity or egoism? Or is that maybe a pretty healthy way to bump through life, okay? Is overrating yourself short of putting yourself in destructive situations? Is that a way to be happy and optimistic, right? Or resilient? So people call this self-serving attributional biases, and this will play out a little bit like the fundamental attribution error. Let me remind you of what that is. The fundamental attribution error is when other people do things, it's their character, and especially failings are because of failings of their character. When we do things we're not especially proud of or don't think are awesome, that's the situation that made us do it. And we don't provide that same understanding of the situation to understand the behaviors of others. It's not intuitive to do so. So they did experiments where the experimenter set up how well you would do on tests. They made the test super difficult or easier, sensory or perceptual discrimination, social sensitivity, competitive games. It's all set up by the experimenter. They can make tests brutally hard or pretty easy, right? They can make you do well or make you do badly. And when people did well, and they were asked to say why they thought they did well, the usual description was because I'm a particularly social person, I'm very competitive, I'm extra good at sensory perception. You pick it. When they did badly, that was a tough test. Okay, it's rare for people to say, that was an easy test, who wouldn't do well? All right? If you do well, people tend to ascribe it to their character, and when they do badly, the situation. So even within ourselves, and it extends to family, social, and political groups and sports teams. I mean, you may know, like, I'm very proud and happy to be a member of the MIT community. Something happens bad at MIT. I don't go, well, then MIT stinks, right? I go, oh, there was a situation that wasn't well handled by an individual, right? Okay? Same thing, you might think about the country you belong to. We don't say, US does something bad. Most of us don't go, well, US stinks. We go, that situation wasn't very good. We got to change things, yeah.
About how people explain things to others or about what they actually believe?
So the question was, is it what they actually believe or say things to others? I think the evidence is it's about what they say to themselves, truly, about how to explain success or failure. Okay? So people are biased to attribute their successes to their wonderful traits and their failures to situations. But we talked earlier that can be a healthy thing, right? Because then you can bounce back. You can say, well, I did badly, but hey, I'm a winner. And tomorrow morning I'll get up and I'm back at the bed, right? Okay, instead of saying, oh, I'm a loser, it's all just pointless, right? So in what sense it's good to have this? It's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's probably a thing of positive mental health, but it can make us overlook causes of things. So an example of that.
Okay. Wait here. I thought this was going to properly address the question that the teacher itself posed. So, anyways, yeah. The previous point was basically also the amount of people that is in a self-serving bias, describing themselves as better than average, and it was obviously because they are students talking about the students, but also using teachers as other focal points of the analysis of how many people truly believe themselves to be above average. And after that, it is that comes this re-narration, because we have already heard about it. It is already a known fact in this course, at the very least, the self-serving bias. Okay, I, I am not going to delve that much into it. It doesn't really add fully into the fact of a proper explanation as to why so many people has accustomed themselves to do that. Because not only it happens in a deeper level, not only it happens that when you go through something, you have a tendency towards seeing yourself as somebody who did it well, regardless of the situation. It happens that the more not only you but everybody else does the same type of activity, this type of behavior keeps being reinforced. If we are talking about the social aspect of psychology, it needs to be addressed the amount of times in which, if the whole society that holds these traditions never addresses the problems that are brought by them into the table because they never see anything bad in doing so, in continuing with this type of behaviors, nothing is truly going to change. The exact same thing happens here. It, if you're talking about having that much of a bias towards believing that you are an outstanding anything, we're talking about students and professors, but it really applies to any kind of field. You can't disregard the reality of, well, man, I believe that I also am somehow better than others, and the next person to you um, says the same thing, and the other one repeats the same type of thing, if nobody ever addresses that it might not be healthy to believe to be so much above the norm, it will never change. We're talking about the social aspect of psychology. It will never change if nobody talks about this. But, anyways, I guess, and also, before it's later, not worrisome, at the very least, you said hi, and let's say there is always time to watch later on pods and whatever else. So don't worry. I think our responsibilities are always more important than everything else. Um, any kind of entertainment that you might consume, say. So yeah, it is more than justified. Literally, don't worry. But regardless, continue with this. On the other hand, also because it doesn't only have the side of the the prevalence of this type of behavior, of silence that exists around it. It also has another layer of, because nobody ever truly wishes to even try to mention the importance of fixing, or yeah, properly seeing how negative it can impact the way in which you interact with the rest of the world, believing that you are so outstanding, because it ends up also changing, let's say like this, in a deeper explanation. If you perceive yourself as being somebody so capable of dealing with the world, the way in which you're going to approach problems is going to be a grandioser way of doing so, even if the problems themselves are truly hard to overcome. And this, on one hand, can be useful because at the end of the day, the more you have inside of yourself the conviction that you are going to be capable of dealing with problems, um, the more you are certainly obtaining the possibility of dealing with them. On the other hand, there is a problem, and that is, if you end up deluding yourself into believing that you're going to do well, that is where finally the delusional state comes into play, and you truly believe things like you have more capacities, you are more capable of dealing with situations than others in realms in which your abilities can't fully work in your favor, and you end up putting yourself in a bigger risk. And to a certain extent, it was addressed, but it wasn't fully said. The negative part of it is a trait that happens to everybody to some point or another, but that is interesting to note and to be conscious of, because in some areas you have a tendency towards truly believing that you are incredibly capable of something. Be it whatever. The problem is this, it can happen anywhere in your existence, let's say. So it ends up being harmful to even focus on just one thing. It can happen anywhere. So believing that you are better at something than the rest ends up putting you at a greater risk just because you are more courageous towards higher difficulties of that same type of task on one hand, and on the other, the negative or the even worse side of this is because at the very least, as a human being, you're capable of recognizing that nobody is capable of being perfect. Therefore, you also shouldn't be capable of being the best at so many fields. Sometimes, just because you have a narrative in which you believe that you're good at something, you end up rejecting the possibility of being good at other areas in your life in which you are sometimes even better than what you are considering yourself to be good at in the moment, let's say. That is why, once again, the consideration of, wow, I might be good, I might be bad in something, doesn't simply have a side of, wow, uh, I have I have capacities above average. It is a little bit beyond that because there are problems and there are negative aspects to that that can truly affect you in, I believe, harmful ways. Because once again, imagine that you're destroying your growth in other areas because you are not capable of noticing how good you can be at them just because you believe that you're capable of serving others in only one particular area, nowhere else. That is by itself already harmful, I believe. So yeah, I don't know. That was the point. Sorry. Let us continue. Uh, thanks.
As we construct social realities, and you may know this is the original study, but there's a million since, where they took an undefeated Princeton team, played Dartmouth in a football game. Princeton won. And then they looked at the newspaper accounts of the games, were totally different. They showed the film to students from the two campuses. And depending on which team you were rooting for, you tended to view the other team as, dirty, not playing fair, not doing the right thing. You don't have to be much of a sports fan to, notice things where the other team is not doing the right thing. And your team, when it doesn't do the right thing, well, they were under pressure, it was atypical, right? Okay. And that makes it, of course, hard for people to get together. We don't too much worry about Princeton-Dartmouth tension in the world, but we do worry about tensions, in the Middle East between Palestinians and Israelis. When they see the same news story, how do they interpret what happened in that news story? So this question of, if we have illusions that we're sort of better than we are a little bit, is that a bad thing or is that a good thing? Was tested in a sort of ironic study by Alloy and Abramson looking at patients with actual clinical depression. So they gave depressed and non-depressed students tasks that varied in degree of contingency. That is, how much the performance of the participant actually influenced the outcome. They controlled that. And then they asked people afterwards to estimate the degree of contingency between a button press and a green light going on. How much of it was you, and how much of it seemed to be randomly done by the experimenter? Depressed students in this particular study were more accurate in knowing when it would depend on them, and non-depressed students overestimated the contingency. They overestimated their influence on the situation when the outcomes were desired. Awesome, that's because I'm awesome. All right? And when things didn't go so well, again, not really under their control, but they don't know that, it's the situation. Something was screwed up with the experiment, okay? So they're more variable. They interpret the situation much more, again, on these things. And you can say they're less accurate, but you could also say that's a way, again, to have confidence in yourself and optimism about the future. Another way in which we sort of believe and justify our choices, but a way in which we're socially influenced is this, the phenomenon called false consensus, that people choose to engage in a behavior, that those people who do that believe that it's more common and that more people do that. That when you do something, the more you do it, the more you think other people do it too, what's the big deal, right? You might know that feeling. So the original experiment on the Stanford campus for this phenomenon from Lee Ross was he asked people to carry around a sign on campus that said, "Eat at Joe's," okay, for 30 minutes. Some people said, like, no, thank you. Some people said, yes, because they were obedient, okay, compliant. Now, of the people who said, yes, I'll carry that sign for 30 minutes, they thought the majority of other people, when asked to do so, will do so. Okay, they thought, well, that's the way most people are, and I'm going to behave like most people. That's a false consensus. The people who said, no, I won't do it, they thought only the majority would not do it. So part of their thinking about deciding if they'll do something or not is their estimate of whether people in general would do it. But what you can see happens is that's driven by whether they're going to do it or not. All right? So for example, teenage smokers estimate higher rates of smoking than non-smokers. Domestically abusive men estimate that about 28% of men have violently thrown things at their partner. Best estimates is down to 12%. So we tend to overly believe that other people will do the same behaviors that we do, and that's part of justifying those behaviors. A sort of demonstration of that was from Phil Zimbardo, the social psychologist who did the prison experiment. This is some of the same flavor, not quite as dramatic. But he worked in New York before he moved to Stanford, so he compared the Bronx to Palo Alto. In 1980 was the paper published. And he left out cars, one in an upper middle class Palo Alto, very suburban area if you haven't been there, and one in a tough Bronx area. As you can imagine, you leave a car out there by itself in the Bronx area without a license plate, and the hood was up, it was stripped within a day. So you park a car, you push up the hood, no license plate, stripped within a day. In Palo Alto, it's untouched for a week, okay? So that has to do with the environment you're in. But then here's the false consensus. So then they smash a window, and within an hour, it's stripped, right? As soon as you smash window, we talked about broken windows. Here it is literally, okay? As soon as somebody says, that all rules are off, this car, smashed, wrecked, that's the behavior I can engage in, okay? So it's not, okay? So what you perceive as the relevant sort of environment of behaviors that are appropriate hugely influences and justifies and drives your own behavior. Now,
okay. Should we talk here to note some minimal points, let's say, it's being discussed in this part? It certainly, once again, we are still in the part of justifying behaviors and such, and it seems interesting to note, let's say, this side of not only you have a tendency towards believing that others do things, therefore you act upon the census that you believe exists towards others, but also the way in which the limitations imposed by the amount of knowledge that you possess towards the events that you engage in is what dictates the amount of engagement that you also experience, let's say, towards the activities that you perform. If you do not choose to do something most of the time, the question that ends up being brought at this point is, how much do you truly believe that what you are not choosing is because of your own self, or rather because you lack enough information to properly engage in something, in terms of something that is novel, not something that you already know is like, in something that is novel. How much you chose to not engage in that activity because you simply don't understand what other people think about it. It is the same thing as with when you believe that you might fail to do something, you're more prone to not even try to do it because a lot of times you don't even have problems with failing. The problem itself is with the results of people knowing that you failed. And that is why also, I hope it is brought later on, when people is shown that other people will know, one of the many studies in this field, when people is shown that other people will know that they are going to be observed doing something risky that could lead to them failing, there is a lesser amount of inclination towards doing this type of risky behavior compared to the situations in which you decide to act upon your simply your wishes, your what is task and ask out of you, let's say, because once again, an experiment is a place in which you are asked to do something, in which even if you are given the possibility of refusing, you should understand that you are being asked to do it because it is meaningful to the experiment itself in one way or another. So refusing is kind of more often than not going against the experiment itself. So whatever, the point is that basically. But yeah, I don't know. Continuing, I guess.
One of the tasks people have is to try to convince people to do public goods in various ways. And this is an ad that when I was younger was very famous. I mean, for you, it's so long ago in history that you may not even know it, but it was one of the most famous ones when the United States was first confronting issues with environmental problems and pollution. You may not believe this, but there was an era when there was fantastic pollution in the air and in the water and the land, and nobody seemed to care about it at all because land seemed endless. It wasn't even a thought, okay? So Earth Day was from the 1970s. That was kind of the marking of a wider consciousness of the consequence of ruining the environment. And so in the very earliest stages, when people weren't used to sort of almost any discussion of that, there was this ad with a Native American with a tear running down his face. And let me show you the ad.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, copyright. I love you.
A very powerful ad at the time, and one that I'll show you in a minute, social psychologists believe was completely counterproductive to the goal of reducing pollution. Exactly the thing you don't want to do, okay? Because we just talked about false consensus and about these environmental justification. So I'll tell you, but let's just, what does that mean? So if you see a lot of people throwing garbage onto the beach, onto the street, into the river, what are you allowed to do? Pollute yourself. Hey, everybody else is throwing it. What's the big deal? That's the mode of behavior, right? Broken window, steal the car. Litter everywhere. Okay, somebody's saying it's not a good idea, but the behavior I see is littering, littering, littering. It's okay to litter. So it literally showed this in experiments. They took people into areas, into parks. They surrounded them with different amounts of trash. Here's a percentage of people who littered. Here's how much trash was around them. They went into parks and they put a little trash and they watched somebody come by. Still, some people are littering. Maybe less would now, I don't know. But as soon as there was 4 pieces or 8 pieces of littering, then you more than double the littering when there's 0. So the very example of showing littering drives littering. You say, nobody's saying it's a good thing, but hey, it's what everybody's doing, okay? And why do we litter? Because we're kind of lazy and we just don't, most of us don't just want to bother to walk to the garbage can, right? Okay. So they did an experiment with public service announcements where they said the important thing is to see behaviors that are the behavior you want. Like in this case, it was a recycling thing. And then you show one example of a person who doesn't do it, and you say, bad person. You don't say bad person, but you send that message. You show, here's the behavior we want. There's somebody doing that. Okay? And what they found is a 25%, this is truly in the community, increase in recycling. So if you want to get people to do things, showing them bad behavior, unfortunately, makes them think that bad behavior is widespread and acceptable way to go. So you have to show them good behavior and then give maybe one example of bad things because you don't want to be labeled bad, okay? But mostly they have to see the behavior you want, not the behavior you're trying to discourage. So, from a social psychologist, exactly the opposite outcome of the intended ad. So this speaks to a gap almost all of us have. I mean, some of you.
Okay, I believe this is a completely different example. So give me a second, because something weird is to think about the notion of, man, why would you choose to do something that you are getting told that you shouldn't do? I mean, I guess that is once again the sense of, wow, everybody is the problem except me. Probably I also happened to do the same thing in my case when it happened that, wow, I got told, yeah, you shouldn't do this type of activity. And I ended up doing it anyways because I saw it before. Therefore, I understood that it wasn't really that bad, but man, if you were to describe to someone else, not the general consensus of the population, something so wide. No, you watch someone once decided to try. Yeah, better example, you watch, I don't know, your very close friend watch an ad about how negative it is to litter, and because they watched that ad, they still somehow ended up littering because it was shown people littering. If you say it that way, I feel like I will say my friend is kind of stupid. Sorry, but my friend seems to have some kind of problem on their head. Why did they do that if they literally saw how negative it was? But I don't know, man. It does feel weird to take that into consideration or to see it that way. It's like you're justifying something from a different side than what is truly being considered. Say, it is like you chose to say, this one thing can truly be better, not because it is in any particular way better, but rather because I chose to believe that seeing other people do what is being told to me that is negative ends up reinforcing my belief in that this action itself is not truly negative, as I kind of described it before. The consequences of doing something bad should be shown in such a level that I understand enough. Nobody is even willing to commit this type of action. If in the moment in which I am being told that doing something bad, I am being shown that people still do this kind of action, what I end up learning is that nobody truly cares. Therefore, the message itself ends up being invalidated instantly by the actions shown in the message. I think it goes into the realm of is this whole idea of actions speak more than words in a lot of situations. So something of that sort. The message that you are trying to say ends up being negated by what you are showing, accompanying that message. So it makes sense. I guess it does make sense. But still, if you were to describe it in a very particular level, I would think my peers, my friends, whoever it is that you're talking about has some type of mental problem to take such level of action. I don't know.
You may be more perfect than I, many of you may be more perfect than I, but here's the gap we face every morning when we get up, which is the difference between our attitudes and our actions. The things we know are the way we wish we were, the right thing to do, and the way in which sometimes we don't always do the rightest thing we know we could. So daffodil days, you may know, occur in many places, including universities, where you buy a daffodil, and there's a 4-day campus event to benefit American Cancer Society. So it's a nice thing. It's buying a flower. It's a good cause, fighting cancer, right? Very positive. So they went to a study with 251 Cornell students, and they asked them, when Daffodil Day comes up, and you just spend a tiny bit of money, it's a very small amount of money they ask for students, will you buy at least one flower? And over 80% said, yes, I will. For a cause like that, buying a beautiful flower to fight cancer, I'll spend $1. How about the other students? Well, they're kind of lazy and they have good intentions, but probably only about half of them will do it. That's a little bit of the self-affirmation, right? I'm a good person, other people a little bit flawed. All right. So how many people actually buy it? 43%. So what happened to this 40%? Well, it's a little bit like the story. They were busy, things were happening. They weren't for cancer and against flowers, right? Just they got busy. There were exams, there was stuff going on. And how do we explain to ourselves this gap between the attitudes we hold and truly hold, right? That we want to do good things and be a good person, and the actions we do, which are often a little bit below that. So this gap between our attitudes and our actions has led to the phenomenon of cognitive dissonance. You now hear this term used widely. Originally had a pretty narrow meaning. I'm going to be just talking about that narrow meaning. It's become a term that's used much more widely. But here's the original work from Festinger. So he said that we have a problem all the time, that we have a gap between our attitudes and our behaviors. And that as humans, we have to solve this because we don't feel good about that gap. And so here's how he approached showing how we solve that problem. Of course, the nice thing would be just do the right thing all the time, but that's not within most of our somehow our grasp, okay? So here's what he had people do. He had people come in and do a purposefully boring task. So they would pack and unpack spools in a tray, or they would turn tiny little screws, each of them a quarter thing. It was purposefully boring. You could tell it was boring, and it was boring, okay? This was the goal. And then either nothing would happen, that's one group, or you would get paid $1, not much money, or $20, considerably better, to lie and tell the next person who's coming in that this was an interesting and worthwhile task. Okay, so you imagine you go in there, you do something that's really boring. Imagine you're in this group. They say, here's $1. Will you lie to the next person? Or here's $20. Will you lie to the next person saying this was a pretty cool task? I can't believe how lucky you are to have the next term. And then they say, okay, now we know you lied to that person. We asked you to do it. But really, really, how was the task? Really, really, how was the task? And here's the amazing finding. If you don't lie, you say, I didn't like it very much at all. Here's 0, lesson 0. If you were paid $1 to lie, whoa, it really was good. If you paid $20 to lie, you pretty much agree it stinks, okay? So how does that work? You have to see the irony of this, right? So the interpretation is this. If somebody pays you $20 to make a white lie, you don't see this as a brutal lie, right? Just telling the next student that this is a pretty cool task, right? Is $20 worth a white lie? You can live with that. You know why you did it. But $1, would you sacrifice your integrity for $1? Okay, so you understand? $1? How cheap can you be, right? Okay, so their idea is this, but now they're asking them really, 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 the way that people put together their attitudes like I lied for a mere dollar to say, hey, it must have been more interesting than I first thought. Come to think of it, it was pretty interesting. Boom. Do you understand that? So the effort to match up the discrepancy between your attitudes and actions, you solve. You can't let them go like this. You can explain this. I lied because I got paid a bunch. This you can't explain. It's too hard to understand. And you really create a rationalization that puts it all together. And you really, really report now that this was a pretty good task. Okay? Here's another one. And this is not high-tech experiment.
Okay. Wait, because I will forget at this rate. Wait, give me a second. Okay, we're still completely on the notes. But at the same time, there is something that I wanted to address, not in this particular part of the lie. It was on the daffodil examples. Was it a daffodil? It was a daffodil, right? Or that what was it? A flower? I don't know which one. Some flower, buying flower. Cancer, basically that. The point was, I was thinking, and there isn't really that much to add, except one tiny thing. Not only do you have the part of, you can always believe that people are going to be more responsible, but also there is one side, and that is what didn't get mentioned, that I think is important. Probably, if it were to be measured throughout time, you will see that when you ask people, even if they are going to do something or not, as in, are you going to be a good citizen, and are you going to behave, and are you going to fulfill your what is it? Your role as somebody who supports those who are in dire need of you, let's say. Are you going to do that? And are you going to truly show others how much of an exemplar good person you are? If you ask that or not, you're already changing their behavior. That is part of the behavioral science of this. And that is weirdly not mentioned here. You know, that the amount of people that got ask why did they, if they were going to do it or not, sorry, that instantaneously, as they said, or as they got asked that and ended up being forced to say yes, because once again, 83% of people shows that you are to some degree or not being forced to agree with that. Even if it doesn't mean that you are saying something bad by itself, you already have inside of you the social standards and the comprehension that saying that you are not going to support something so helpful for so many other people and such. You already have all of that understanding. You don't need somebody explaining to you why saying no is bad. You already have inside of you the proper comprehension of why acting upon that is necessary. And now we are even being held accountable for your future actions, something that might happen or not, and that you have to accept as what is going to happen. Once that goes into the whole equation, the chances of you acting get, I would even say, exponentially increased. The proper following up, or the proper follow up should have been, and how many of the, because it had something like, I think it was 83% of people thinks they are going to do it themselves. They think that 56% of other people are going to do it, and they think, the reality ends up being only 42 or 43% of the actual amount of people does buy a flower to support this good cause, let's say. the proper following up of that should have been, okay, and from that whole 43%, how many of those people were from those who we interviewed before? And also, if it is possible also to analyze how many of those people were first degree of separation from those who we also ask, because the way in which not only your behavior gets modified, the moment in which you are made aware of your responsibilities, but also the moment in which you have a conversation talking with others about the responsibility that you now bear, let's say, and that you are taking upon yourself to fulfill, it is the moment in which you are also altering the behavior of others, let's say. It goes back to, if you want to stop littering, you should have no littering at all, because that way you show people how negative it is to litter. Your action is going to completely change the way in which everything else works. So, if your friend goes and buys a flower, something that is so cheap, they are going to, already by doing that and telling you that they did so, no matter the amount of enthusiasm, obviously with an even higher degree of alteration imposed on you if they put a lot more enthusiasm on what they are saying, but no matter the degree of enthusiasm to which they talk about these things, you're going to already get some modifications on your behaviors, and you're already going to start working differently and thinking that, oh wow, my dear friend who already did this thing is fulfilling the role, therefore I should also do it. Because the worst thing is not only that I am not fulfilling my role, and that is the reality, the worst thing will be that he will know, or yeah, that my friend will know I didn't fulfill my role. That somebody else will be aware of my problem, of my, in this very same thing, cognitive bias, you know? So there was a layer that I think lacks, yeah, is lacking here. But so far it makes sense. It doesn't really need that much more of an analysis than that. It simply happens that it certainly needs to be mentioned because I don't remember. I know I heard about it once. I don't think. I hope it was here. I don't think it was here. About an example of this very same sort, in which the moment in which you are made aware of a situation in which you might play a role or not is the moment in which you do accept that as your role and act upon what you say. And yeah, I would even go as far as to say the people that did even negate the possibility of buying a flower, how many of those are also, or were also part of the process of getting a flower later on. You never truly know how many people do contribute after they are asked to think about the things that they are going to do. Because the moment in which you hold them accountable is the moment in which they start to behave differently, let's say. But yeah, I don't know. Anyways, continuing. That's what I wanted to say. That's what I was stuck on. And yeah, I don't know. Before moving on in reality, that is about the flowers. About this other example, I don't think there is really that much to learn here. I mean, funny to see how easy can some people justify themselves that way. Like, wow, yeah, this was the most worthy some experience that I ever had in my life. And yeah, it was quite funny, the remark of the teacher of, yeah, you never know, or you never want to accept that you're selling yourself off so cheaply, your own self, just to. So yeah, that is quite nothing to really add there. Anyways, continuing.
Experiments. You can do amazing experiments, without zapping people. But when I tell you, by the time I tell you at the end of this one experiment, let's see if I have one more on this. Now, I'll tell you this. I'll mention it now, and that's the next one. I'll mention it. It pretty much ruins it whenever anybody tells you how satisfied they are with almost anything they've done in their life. This has ruined it for me. Okay, and I'll tell you. All right. Although I know that you're better off polishing your happiness, right? So here's this simple experiment. This guy, Jack Brem, had a bunch of wedding gifts, and he took his wedding gifts to the lab. Okay, it was not very high tech, and he had people rate how much they wanted them. So he had stuff like a desk lamp, a toaster, a stopwatch, a radio, a bunch of stuff you get in the 1950s as wedding gifts. People rated how much they liked them. And then he picked two that were kind of in the middle of the list and rated right next to each other, all right? And he said, will you pick one of these two? You get to take it home. Really pick one of these two that you rated in the middle, right next to each other. And you pick one. He said, okay, do one more thing before you take it home. Tell me again your ratings for the different things here. And here's what they find, that the item that you chose moves up. You already have it. But where it, let's say it's rated 1 to 10, it was rated a 5, it now becomes a 2. Man, that stopwatch, that's pretty awesome. You know, I thought it was a 5, but it's a 2, maybe a 1. I can't believe how lucky I am that I picked that, okay? And how about the one you didn't pick? Say the toaster was number 6 or number 4. That moves down 9 or 10. That toaster stinks. That would have been such a bad choice to attend Harvard. It would have been a disaster. Thank goodness I picked MIT, okay? So the idea is even something like this, and everything that do college choices, cars, any experiment you do, if you have people rate after they made a decision about what they're going to do, they always rate the thing they picked as awesome on average, and the thing they didn't pick as much worse than they initially rated it. And again, you can say, is that a way we can have a happy life? Would you want to be at MIT every day going, if only I had gone to Princeton? Would you want to get married to somebody and say, if only I had waited a little bit longer? You know? All right? Would you, for your career, could you have said, I went right to medical school or law school or engineering, if only I had waited longer? Right? So you want to say, no, thank goodness I picked that college, thank goodness I picked that career, thank goodness I picked that spouse or partner, because the other choices that are vaguely in my head were awful. I don't know how I was even thinking about them, right? So this is ruining it for me every time somebody tells me how happy they are with a choice they've made in their life, because I look at this and go, yeah, once you make that choice, you're going to rate it as awesome no matter what, okay? And a famous example is, now many of you are taking pretty tough courses. Years later, when you come back to for alumni events, and hopefully many of you will have good feelings about MIT and come back and see your classmates, and you will get around and say, oh, that course was so brutal. I know that won't be this course, okay? That course was so brutal with the problem sets, but it made me a stronger person, a better person. Thank goodness I did it, right? Okay, and maybe it does, but let me tell you why you will think that in large numbers, okay? So 1959, it's a little bit of a sociological experiment incentive to think of people in 1959. And they were told to qualify for a research study, some women were required to read aloud a list of obscene words, which was seen as extremely embarrassing and inappropriate in 1959. Nowadays, it might be the preferred mode, right? Okay, but in 1959, it's like, I don't know, this is not right, okay? Or mild words, so that's an experimenter. Then you got the privilege, if you did this, to listen to a lecture on mating habits of lower animals. But they made it the most boring they could. Not that this, you know, this could go a couple different ways, mating habits of lower animals. They made it super boring on purpose, okay? Lecture's over, and they asked the students to rate the lecture, a intentionally super boring lecture. And the women were either in the group with the unpleasant experience of having to read aloud uncomfortable word lists, or just neutral words, no big deal. Who rated the lecture better? The women who read the obscene list of words, because they were saying, well, why would I do this if the lecture weren't terrific, okay? So the worse the experience, the more it is, you know, where you've had some sense of choice in it, the more people will explain to themselves, I took it for an extremely good reason. I would not do a painful thing. I'm not that incompetent. It must have been a wise decision. And in fact, I should tell you that if the examiner picks these items, you don't have much of an effect. So if you rate items, you know, 4 and 5 or 5 and 6, and the examiner gives you the stopwatch, it doesn't change your ratings. Because you didn't choose it, the examiner did. The stopwatch is a mediocre gift. It's still a mediocre gift, okay? But if you chose it, you have to justify the choice. So, and you know, there's 1,000 experiments like this. Why did I do something so painful? It must have been for a very good reason, okay? And then you figure out what that reason was. Like the lecture was more awesome than I thought. That physics course, that math course, that computer science course just made me the person I am today, right? Okay. We're gonna switch gears now. First impression.
Okay, yeah. So thank you. Going back into this, something that I think should have been mentioned properly, or should have been mentioned, man, is, well, I will probably defend it as it might have as well not even been tested at this point. I don't know how new is that this discovery, is it a discovery? That paper, that research, that experiment, let's say like that experiment of the amount of a lot of people are not willing to truly rate things in truly negative ways or overwhelmingly good ways. They are only capable of doing so in a scale of 1 to 10, capable of doing it mostly between the 6 and 8 rates. Not a lot of people, and a lot means 80 90% of people are not going to move from those three numbers. But what this talks about is you don't really reveal how you feel about something fully until it is truly asked of you to do so. And in this case, that is why also it happens that, yeah, you won't ever say that you hated something that you were given. You will simply say, yeah, this is a 6 instead of a 7. Because a 6 is still okay. It is still a good number, let's say. It is an appreciational number, let's go with. Therefore, you don't think about saying, no, yeah, I hate this thing. You simply say, yeah, okay, it's a little bit below average. And only, or mostly, if you feel strongly about something, your rating changes from 7 or from 6 to 5, which is still incredibly high. And you won't reveal your true feelings. But it is once you are confronted with the necessity of truly acting upon your thoughts, acting upon what you observe, that you end up finally revealing, let's say, your true colors. To a certain extent, it doesn't mean that you're always lying and that you are always against saying and showing others what you truly feel and whatever. It simply happens that there is a degree of concealment that always exists behind the actions that we take because we believe it's useful to not fully expose how we feel about something, as strong feelings might be negative in any kind of way, because even overly positive um, views of things is bad. No, so it makes sense. It makes complete sense at that side. The only thing I do still think about is the, the part of areas it does happen though that somebody justifies things more than they are willing to accept also because you truly don't become fully aware of the justifications that you impose in the life that you carry to make it seem like you truly enjoy what you have in your hands. I get what the professor means when he says, yeah, I ruin for me when somebody expresses their opinion about something. You will obviously say that you enjoy what you have. It ends up showing that you can create the positiveness out of everything. And I think that is, on the other hand, kind of useful at the end of the day to show that even if you chose something that you could hate, you're capable of finding it interesting and good to have, regardless of your opinion. Because of that, it shows that there is a potential to make even the worst of the situations good things happen, let's say. But it requires a longer explanation. So yeah, anyways. Eh, but now wait a little bit. Because I have a tiny, let's say, situation now in this precise moment. So I could take a tiny quote unquote idle break. Thank you. See you in like a minute or so. Goodbye. Yo, what's up? I'm back. Anyways, so before I continue, I wanna say something, people. This so we have left. We don't that much left. Yeah, I might try to rush a little consumption of this content, this media. Anyways, I guess. Also, why is there a little, yeah, a little bit of a black edge here? They always is that. They always have that into the. Oh my god! I cannot with this. I cannot. I cannot live with this contempt. I guess I don't know. Second, I just literally now noticed that I should have cropped something that I didn't. I guess fan of being your own editor. I guess I don't know. Uh, so we gained 13. Amazing, surprising. Anyways, hello. Thank you for your patience, friend. So, continuing. I. What was the thing? Last thing I said? I had an aneurysm and I forgot. No, yeah, it was something along the lines of how much it is interesting to see how people is willing to change their opinions about stuff and such, based simply on the desire, let's say, of justifying their actions more. And all of that, and the possibility of even finding out that people is willing to justify things because it might give them a better sense of life and make them believe that what they have in their hands is always better. Be- because once again, this ends up, all of this, I think, is still in the loop of self-serving biases and such. So you never know truly how many of those are influencing you to some degree, but the main point is not that. The main point, I think, lies in realizing how many times does something of this sort truly affect yourself in terms of perhaps, I will say, perhaps you have something that also should can be taken as good, but because of your previous actions, you decided to disregard it, believing that it was truly negative. In this whole fashion of, yeah, you know, the accumulation of negative points towards this thing that can be objectively seen as good makes it look as bad. On my tiny experience in life, subjective experience in life. So, because of that, I am limiting myself to obtain the, yeah, greater heights in terms of achievable just because I have so far seen this one thing as bad in order to keep my whole internal narrative in order, let's say. But yeah, I don't know. It simply makes sense. It doesn't fully explain it all or make it seem possible to solve also. So yeah. Anyways, I guess let me continue after. Yeah, I don't know what happened. Something did just on. Oh yes. Anyways, continue. Thank you for your patience. Let me now for real hit play. Goodbye.
So there's a book from Malcolm Gladwell, Blink, which is really driven by this phenomenon. The first impressions we take of other people. How powerful are they? How valid are they? How accurate are they? So here's how we're going to start the story, all the way back in 1966. They had students rate people's personality on the first day of class before they met each other. So if we had done this in this course, imagine the first day of this course, imagine you're not sitting with a friend, and you're asked to rate people around you on various personality dimensions. And the two that popped out were sociable and responsibility. The people who said they were sociable, people tended to rate them as sociable just from sitting next to them for a moment, or as highly responsible. So this is outgoingness in personality psychology or extroversion, and this is something like conscientiousness. Just talk to a person for a couple of moments, you rate them pretty much like they rate themselves. You don't know anything about their background, you haven't had a big interaction. Literally, it's moments next to each other in the course. Here's another one. 250 students divided into 4 groups who didn't know, divided into groups of 4, who didn't know each other and had not spoken, and they rated each other And there was pretty good correlations between moments of sitting together and how sociable or how extroverted people were, how responsible for conscientiousness. So a few moments with somebody correlates pretty well, your rating on average, with how they know themselves from a lifetime of personal experience. A few moments, pretty well. Now we could say, how well do we rate ourselves? You could already say pretty well, because it's pretty well adjusted with what other people think. But here's another example where they put strangers into groups, videotaped them, had other people later on view the videotapes and rate things like how extroverted they were, how much time did they talk, how many arm movements. The impressions of the judges watching the videotape correlated pretty well with self-ratings and with ratings of other people who saw them just for a few moments personally. So all these things line up. Just from a few moments of experience, you get a surprisingly strong consensus about how outgoing somebody is and how conscientious or responsible they are. And it lines up pretty much with the person's own judgment about themselves that way.
Seems quite hard to crack this one to a certain extent, because the problem is you're totally talking about the way in which others are capable of communicating what they are observing you, and I would go as far as to mention something along the lines of the moment in which you have interactions with other people is the moment in which you start to to make judgments about them, because it is necessary for anybody to make proper character judgments themselves, or those who are around themselves, in order to properly find those who might be later on suitable friends or partners. As always, in a more primal level, not in a socially acceptable level description. It isn't meant to simply be, wow, you are good because you are discriminating so intensely every single time. Simply observational out of this simple explanation. But yeah, it happens that everybody will be analyzing each other's based on these ideas, but unavoidably what I think happens along these lines is you truly don't understand how capable it is somebody else of extracting that information from you. That first contact, it reminded me instantly, when it was talked about it here, the necessity of having what is called chit chat or small talk, and the importance of properly being capable of flowing into this type of conversations, because it is in this type of situations that these type of conversations happen, and it is in this very same type of spaces that you find that how useful or not it was to cultivate these qualities in order to be more capable of dealing with them and using them in your favor, or in order to portray yourself better to others, let's say. But I don't know, it still is quite hard to fully express it. I do believe this one particular uh, note contains more info than a lot of the other content we have observed to some degree. So yeah. Anyways, continuing, I guess.
So this reached the sort of a huge moment from Nalini Ambadi, who's now at Tufts, having this famous experiment, thin slices. Okay, it's a fantastic experiment, and if you ever teach, it makes you nervous. Then we'll discuss whether it should or not. Okay, so at Harvard, here's what she did. She took videotapes of 13 graduate teaching assistants, and they were horrible videotapes. This is 1990. They were horrible videotapes. I'm just going to tell you, you don't even see them around very much because the quality. When you see them, you get sort of you can't believe people even saw things in them. Okay, all right. And she got a random 10-second clips, 30 seconds per teaching assistant. 30 seconds. Right? She shows a silent clip to students. There's no sound even. You're just seeing silently some teaching assistant in front of students saying something. And then she has these students rate from the silent film clip how accepting, active, competent, or confident the teaching assistant is, who they've never met. And of course, they don't know, and they don't know what the teaching assistant's talking about. Here's the impressive thing. Then they correlate the ratings with the actual end of semester rating with students. They take the students who sat through the entire course with a teaching assistant. That's one set of values. They take the students who see 30 seconds of silent, grainy videotape. And they say, how well do these things do together? And they correlate 0.76, which is really high. Okay, it's really high in our real research. That momentary, uninformed impression correlates extremely high with what students rate the teaching assistant after a full semester of back and forth, seeing the teaching assistant, day in, day out, week in, week out, for an entire semester, and all the interactions. Super high correlation. And it stays if it's cut from 30 seconds to 15 or even 6 seconds. So this is a thin slice, a tiny viewing of somebody has this profound effect. So, so one impression you can have from this is something like, gee, we form a first impression, and I'll come back to that. And once we form the first impression, that's it. The ship has sailed to a remarkable degree. It can't be, if we can learn new things about people, we can change our impressions. It's not that we can't, but to a remarkable degree, we've set our final impression of that person within seconds of an interaction. It's kind of, now you could say, and of course it's going to be fraught with every kind of social prejudice you can imagine and complicating prejudice you can imagine. 6 seconds, not a lot to sort through intellectually. It shows up in real life. For example, listen to 20 seconds of a physician speaking during a routine office visit. They tape recorded them. Above chance prediction of who was sued for malpractice or not. Because if you like a doctor, you tend to forgive an error as a human error. If you don't like a doctor, you're going to sue that person because you're pretty mad at them. Okay? So do you give them the benefit of the doubt they made a mistake? Or do you think they ought to be sued and punished for the bad thing they did with you? Depends how much you like the person to start with. Now, so one thing could be that we go by first impressions. What's the other possibility you could imagine? The pessimistic view of this is, and it's somewhere I think really in the middle, it's just human nature. The pessimistic view is 6 seconds. Like when we talk about this, the teaching assistants and I, as we begin the course, go, oh, please have the first 6 seconds go okay. Because that's going to be 3/4 of your teaching evaluations, which are due Monday by 9 a.m., okay? All right? So please fill those out, by the way, this reminds me. The first 6 seconds, and that's pretty much it. And everything we do for the rest of the semester, is only going to be about 1/4 of your rating. That's hard to believe, right? So one thing is it's all a big confusion, and humans just, what's the other possibility that's a little bit more optimistic and maybe accurate? We know what we like. We know what we like, okay? And amazingly, we can tell within seconds, under many circumstances, whether there's something about a person that we like or don't. It's not that the 6 seconds are just superficial in a dumb way. It's we detect things about that person that truly are something about who they are, and that tends to carry all the way through our human interactions with them. So I think it's somewhere in that range. And does it matter? Is it all just about popularity contest, or does it affect other things?
Okay, wait. It got me thinking, but going back into the focus, there is one particular thing that I would have liked to have here at hand. It is the rating, the proper rating of how many people were observed, and also the rates themselves, because there is a big correlation. Okay, perfect. Which are the rates, my brother? I want to know exactly. We have been doing a good job before showing those rates. Maybe a high enough correlation is 25%. It is already 1/4 of a correlation, Maybe it is a 50, maybe it is a 75, maybe it is a 90%. And all those numbers are high based on where you are assessing that from. So it doesn't fully explain things, but well, I get it. I do at the very least get the idea, because I also just remember we already saw this before, to some degree or not. The importance of having proper first impressions and such is truly necessarily a defining factor of how you keep interacting with others, and sadly, it was also shown you don't really have that much of a capacity over properly assessing someone in a positive manner. The only one of the few things I will say, though, is probably what doesn't get fully addressed here, and you don't know how much of a capacity you have in your hands to not only influence, but even to go as far as to make something that you believe about someone be changed into a completely new optic the moment in which you realize of these biases that you have created towards these notions that you have cemented as judgments, as character judgments about those who are around you, because you have a self-selecting, not self, because it isn't about yourself, but inside of yourself there lies a interest for liking people, let's say like that. Therefore, you're not going to judge harshly anybody who you encounter for the first time. It is only with enough patience that you find out the ugliness that lies inside of the soul of those who are around you, let's say. Therefore, you won't judge with the negativity somebody who you like, because you understand the necessity of doing the positive character judgment in order to get them to be properly close to you in order even more to even more if they have something that truly interests you at first to obtain that thing that they have to be closer to you in any particular way possible. And I do think it is quite strange to have no mention also of not only this character analysis that you realize can truly define things about the whole interactions that you keep having with them later on, but also, and I think this is the weird part, there is no proper mention of men. You never know if also not only you're judging somebody because of what they are doing or not, but you might be judging somebody based on just because you wanted to see them in a good light, as it was forced in the study. You will already start, let's say, biasing towards positive traits even more than before. I, I don't know how much of a good example it is, but I will go as far as to say that is also why, to a certain extent, it will be even comprehensible that something like those, I don't know, it is those scenarios in which you are placed to find other people and to interact with other people when they force you to say good things about them. The first moment you have them in front of you, it is that you start already judging them in order to make them look even better in your eyes, let's say. It might as well be some kind of manipulation. I don't think it is. Yeah, it will make no sense to simply have it happen like that. It certainly increases the odds of making you notice someone and make you take an even bigger inclination towards being close to those people based purely on the fact that you have found something already that you liked and you were not only capable of seeing it, you were forced to externalize that thing which you have seen on them, let's say. But I don't know, it takes quite a little bit of patience to properly observe that. I mean, you never know also how many of those influences are around you and how many people are you to a deeper level. How many people are you truly allowing to keep being around yourself based simply on the first interaction that you had and the first impression which was positive once again because as human beings we have that tendency towards seeing people on the first interaction at the very least in a positive light. It is like you can't constantly rid yourself of the judgments that you possessed in the past in order to see and to fully be congruent with what you wish. It is if we have a self-serving bias towards the people that is sorry, so towards ourselves because we want to make it seem like we are always doing the good things, how much more of a bias there is towards the people that you judge positively and hugely positively, let's say. You don't truly know if something like that isn't happening to you too, and you are not also forgiving somebody who you should in other, yeah, in a completely new scenario judge harshly and not accept back into your life, let's say. But I understand on the other hand, it is a long point, that is why I said it. It I understand on the other hand also the necessity of not fully discarding those who you have sticking through so long. It ends up making sense that you wouldn't truly decide to fully get rid of them just because they seem to be to some degree or another um, potentially interesting people or dangerous people. But it does seem at the same time interesting to say that, yeah, or to consider that these people still have some sides some parts of them that do possess a lot more deepness than what you are capable of fully realizing. And because of that, you might be blinding yourself towards the proper final judgment of character that should be always going on, let's say. Not a final one, but rather a more close one, a more realistic one. Because once again, how much are you complying towards making the first impression remain as pure as it was? And how much are you fully forgiving others just because you thought at first that they were good? Therefore, going against that idea might as well hurt you to accept, let's say. But I don't know. It is quite harsh and it is quite horrible, I do believe. I can't see why not that many people even talk about it in any way. It is like being truly capable of executing that degree of judgment might even make you seem bad, let's say, or overly judgmental. Because the moment in which you truly decide to apply judgment and to not base yourself so much around that first impression that you have, it is the moment in which you realize how utterly weird it is for you to do so. Because nobody does that. And that is the moment in which you almost become for the rest a monster. Because you are now judging more than what everybody deems as necessary. But I don't know, it is like a, yeah, that is a moral question. That is not our field, I guess, today. We're simply studying. So yeah, weird. I mean, if it isn't understandable enough, I hope it was. It should give you space to think. It should make you think. It should lead you to think about it. Because it truly talks about the nature of the way in which you talk with other people, and the nature of the acceptance that you have given to other people, and the leeway that you are giving to others based on that prior first image that you had about them, that first impression that made you believe they were good. You know, how many people do you really have around you that you would otherwise, or if they were to come in contact with you, doing something different based on the real way of acting? Based on that, how much would you truly judge them differently, and how differently would you act towards those people? That is an incredibly weird question. Not, yeah, not an utterly weird concept to fathom. Like, how many times are you accepting people around you just because you wish to not disagree with what you first noticed? You know, it seems weird. I believe. Yeah, so that it's a lot. But anyways, I guess. Anyways, moving on. Let me move on. Thank you.
Things of staying within the realm of teaching, they looked at, they asked if you perceive somebody as more likable or conscientious, are they more effective teachers? Is it circle around like that? So they had 5 students in random groups. One was randomly chosen to be a teacher, and these teachers prepared brief math lessons. The students then took a test, and strangers rated 10 seconds of videos of these teachers. So people prepared math lessons, some better, some worse, as you would imagine. The higher these were rated in these 10-second thin slice videos by an external group, the better the test scores of the actual participants. Because something about effective teaching is something about engaging students. Something about engaging students is something about being outgoing or something like that, to a certain degree. So it's not just arbitrary. There's something real in the world that happens. And here's a few examples where people have messed around with that, because there's 2 things that happen that are tricky. One is,
Yeah, thank you, but I think I need to break down that last one bit. So sorry for pausing so much. I mean, I am accepting that I will probably have to cut this off at like the third quarters of the video remain. But anyways, the point is, what gets mentioned there is something about the way in which you express yourself makes it easier. No, it isn't something, brother. It is properly understood and it should have been used, the proper terminology for these things, because we are people that is interested in learning. Therefore, it is understandable that you're going to share your knowledge with as much appreciation as you can for the other one. Anyways, continuing, sorry. Not my point to get angry. What you should be trying to understand is the moment in which you are capable of expressing yourself with more freedomness is the moment in which you are more capable of conveying your ideas better. And this directly correlates with conscientiousness, because you need to be conscious of what you are doing in order to properly express yourself towards others and to be capable of adapting your patterns of speech and whatever else to let them intake the knowledge that you are trying to give them, let's say. So it is impossible for you to gain this knowledge if you're not even willing to take that. It isn't even a risk. The possibility of saying things. Therefore, if you decide to stay very silent and give your, in this case, we're talking about teachers, give you lectures and give examples that are so utterly short of imagination and so concealed in very, 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 very particular and tiny fields, you're not going to properly teach, because teaching itself requires you to be capable of, once again, adapting and giving those who are around you their personalized yet at the same time somehow universal knowledge that you're trying to give them, let's say. So it isn't something that we don't understand. It is fully understood why, if you're capable of being outgoing, you can be a good teacher. But yeah, continuing now for real. Thank you.
Is we know what we like, and we detect it amazingly quickly in people, on average, to a large extent, certainly with error, but to a surprisingly vigorous extent. On the other hand, and we'll come back to this, once we have that first impression, as faulty as it may be, in part, we keep interpreting things in terms of that first impression, right? We give you the benefit of the doubt, or we don't, behavior after behavior. So here's a study that was done in MIT, where now you're going to get some prior information, where half the students were told, the lecture you're about to have, people know him and consider him to be and then here's the two, you're in the group that's told he's a very warm person, industrious, critical, practical, and determined, or half of you would get the information that he's a cold person, industrious, critical, practical, and determined, okay? So you just got an impression, a warm or cold person. You haven't even seen the person. Person gets up and leads a 20-minute discussion. Then you have to fill out evaluations. Let me just pick the example of the warm person. The lecturer is rated as better, but here's the really cool part. Students took more part in discussion. And do you see how that probably made the section better? Okay? Because if you think, this is a nice person, so I can make a comment, I won't get my head bit off, that I didn't do the reading or whatever, it makes a section better. They think it's better, but they make it better because they think the person's a person they want to interact with, simply because they were told on a piece of paper the person's warm or cold, the person's identical time after time. So the first impression, we know what we like. It's surprisingly accurate in certain ways, but it's hard to change because new information is interpreted to be consistent with already formed impressions. So first impressions are unbelievably interesting because they seem to be so powerful in how we choose who we like and don't like, who we hire and don't hire, who we work with and don't work with, who we have relationships and don't have relationships with. And they're based on incredibly little bits of information, which are tantalizingly accurate in one sense, but once we have them, it's hard to override them. So here's a famous experiment on the self-fulfilling prophecy that happens from this first impression that you create, or the experimenter creates. So a famous study where elementary school children gave a test to students. The researchers said, we're going to tell you whether this student is going to have, we believe, based on our research at Harvard, a good or bad year, okay? So you're an elementary school teacher, and you wonder, but they say, oh no, we've done fantastic research at Harvard, we're the top scholars in the field, and we've developed an algorithm that tells you, is the student going to have a good year or a bad year? The teacher gets that information back, and at the end of the year, better scores for those kids randomly described as going to have a good year, worse scores for those kids randomly described as they're going to have a bad year. Now, we didn't tape everything. Nowadays, we could tape everything. But what's your guess that happened? And this might remind you of an experiment we talked about with rats, except now it's children in school in real life. First impression, right? When you've been told by a crack team of Harvard researchers that some kid is going to be slumpy and they make a mistake answering a math question, you go, oh, why am I spending my time on this student? It's not worth my teaching skills, right? Somebody else gives a good answer or makes the same mistake, and you go, oh, we're going to help the student? You know, they're 1 inch away from being perfect on their multiplication table, right? Okay, so the very same behavior gets interpreted as pretty different. Or maybe you just remember when they gave the right answer really well, because you think that's that student. They got 3 and 4 correctly. But once you have that first impression, all the other behaviors start to be interpreted in that context. So one category of things.
Yeah, man. Oh man, so that is weird. That is quite harsh. I guess delving back into it reminds you of the nature of socializing and such things. You really forget sometimes how biased you are towards accepting people that you judge as good and whatever. It is, I think this is quite a scary part. I would even go as far as to say that. I mean, man, how much of a wrong judgment you keep doing about someone based simply on the first impression that you want to preserve, man. Feels weird. It does feel weird. But anyways, I guess continue. I can't really add that much more. I already said what I want to say before. And I don't know. Something a little bit. At the very, very least, I am thankful for having the chance of finding the other part that I described as maybe the lacks this side of descriptions and such. At the very least, that is also, or that is finally included now. So yeah, continue.
Mixed into first impressions that have been studied a lot is sort of consensus physical attractiveness. Of course, different people think differently about physical attractiveness, but in the cultures we live in, there tends to be consensus about the average movie star or beauty contestant or whatever is the era's way of people being seen. So people have shown again and again, this will not surprise you, that physically attractive people are judged as more intelligent, competent, sociable, and moral. Now, why is that? So here's an example. Fifth grade teachers were given report cards and photographs of children they did not know. The photographs were picked to be of children who looked by consensus to be attractive or by consensus to be not so attractive. And they're asked to rate, based on the report cards and the photos, the intelligence and achievement of the children. The attractive children ended up average rated as brighter and more successful than the unattractive children with identical report cards. Right? They're sitting there with all the information. They're making these sort of vague judgments. And the attractiveness element, even from the photo, is coming in to the teachers. A child's misbehavior is attributed to environmental circumstances if it's a more attractive child, and to personalities if it's a less attractive child. Again, this trade-off between character and situation. The attractive child did something bad. Oh, there must have been something in the situation that wasn't well done, okay? The less attractive child does poorly, and you go, oh, that loser, okay? Right? I'm overstating, but you see how what's happening is basically, well, we'll talk about it in a moment. Court cases, people have done studies on court cases. Shorter sentence for more attractive people, longer sentence for less attractive people for what seem to be comparable crimes.
Yeah, but I mean, if this doesn't make you think, I don't know what will. This is utterly harsh. I wish it wasn't, but it is utterly harsh. It reminds you of how biased you can be towards somebody, how much an image that you see about somebody who it is already tricky by itself to understand it, and it is even harder to get it when you add even deeper descriptions, let's say. So, excuse me if it doesn't make sense what I am about to say, but if the image that you see about somebody truly makes you think that what you have in front of you is good or bad, and you take that as the complete reality, the judgments that you make not only guide your life in ways that you are not even capable of comprehending and explaining, the biggest problem is how much you are letting those who, based on this judgment, affect you just because you wish to. I said before, wish to maintain that first impression. You wish to make them keep looking the same way. And this thing, we are being shown that exactly here. Once again, it doesn't really need to be mentioned that something like the child's misbehavior, environmental circumstances are what are determined to be the causes of their misbehaviors if they are more attractive, and their personality if they are less attractive. That doesn't stop making it look utterly weird, man. You know, it feels unsettling to learn how much you can forgive someone because they look okay, let's say. But yeah, I don't know, man. It has you thinking. Let's leave it at that. Anyways, I guess yeah, it is a lot of info. If you truly unpack what is being said, it is a lot of info. But anyways, continue.
So people call this a halo effect, that you take one positive dimension of a person. It could be any. Physical attractiveness is one of the easiest ones to sort of experimentally study. And that once you say one thing is positive, you tend to rate other things as positive. It's just a human nature. You know, she's likable, so she's intelligent. You know, he's attractive, so he's smart. It's just, people do this. It's, you could argue it's not a wise thing to do, an accurate thing to do, definitely not. But people tend to do it. They leak categories. Once they have positive information in one dimension, they start to make positive assumptions on other dimensions. And there's all kinds of examples. There's a thousand of these studies because they're easy to do and they're sort of popular to do. But anyway, so here's one example where they were told that the goal was to study teacher evaluations, and what they really saw was videos of a lecture with a person with a strong Belgian accent. The accent matters for this, okay? And they saw the videos of a person answering questions in a warm and friendly manner or a cold and distant manner. Okay, this was done on purpose. Now, in these two videos, they rated the person in the same person in one set of videos, they were warm and answering, and the other they were cold and distant. So same person, but in two videos. Now they're asked to rate other dimensions besides the warmness of the person. They said, oh, the person who was warm was more attractive. Now it's running the other way. The nicer person was more attractive, more likable, and kind of impressively, had less of an accent. Okay, all right? You understand? It's like, because accents, the trouble with that, the challenge of accents is sometimes they're a little hard to understand, right? So you say, how hard was it to understand? Oh, that nice person, handsome, and pretty easy to understand, okay? Less nice person, on purpose, acting out, you know, not so attractive, and who can understand that thick Belgian accent, okay? So they pick the accent because they say that's ridiculous, okay? All these other, I mean, it's ridiculous that an accent would differ on the basis of whether a person's nice or not. But, and so this is thought to be the reason why you see so many athletes and movie stars doing ads, because they're asking you to leak that same way, you know? Oh, if Kobe Bryant uses that deodorant must be awesome, right? Okay, all right? So that's why they care that that actors, celebrities, that's why they have those ads, because many people have positive feelings about them. And if they can leak into accents, they can certainly leak into, you know, what beer you drink or what makeup you get, right? Okay, so now, one of the problems with these sort of what we might call shortcuts to judging people, first impressions and that kinds of stuff, is when we're making judgment of other people, is that we do this very quickly and unconsciously. Until you know, nobody thinks, if you ask them, they go around misjudging people by the basis of very superficial things, but 1,000 experiments show that on average we tend to do that. So these stereotypes have you know, effects. Once we make a decision, it influences our actual behavior. So here's one example where people tried to show this idea, that we might have some sort of negative idea of somebody for some reason. Now here's the self-fulfilling prophecy. Because we have that negative thought about them, we don't behave with them as nicely as we might. Now that person who we haven't treated nicely, of course, is responding to feeling like they're not treating nicely, and they go, aha! You know, just what I thought, this person stinks, okay? And so you have to sort of circle a positive or a negative spiral in how you treat somebody, how they respond to how you treat them, and then how you think more about them. So an example they did of this, again, using sort of the sort of attractiveness, sort of dating discussion, is they gave, in this case, male participants pictures that suggested a woman they were talking to, who they did not see, was either more or less conventionally attractive, and then they had a 10-minute conversation back and forth. Then they brought in some other males in this study, and they asked them to listen. They don't know anything about the experiment. They just hear a conversation. And they say, listen to this conversation with this woman. Tell us from your impression, how animated is she? How enthusiastic is she? How much is she enjoying herself in this conversation? And this will not surprise you. In fact, in some sense, it's almost trivial. But in the more attractive condition, now the raters don't know that. They don't know anything. They just hear a discussion going back and forth. The women were more sociable, poised, humorous, and socially adept. They were rated that way by the raters. Why? Because the men who got the more attractive pictures were being nicer in their conversational style. The women were responding, having a better conversation back and forth. And so this is an example of the cycle between, you know, in this case,
This is utterly funny. And saying so will make it so wrong, but it is utterly funny, man. Man. Mom. Oh my god. Anyways, excuse me, Abe.
And misleading information and the behavior you have. So and then once you have that thing, you really start to alter the situation. That impression changes how you behave. The other person responds to that behavior, and you have that kind of self-fulfilling style. Okay. Let me switch for just a couple minutes to talk about this idea we mentioned before that the vast majority.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you for switching.
Experimental psychology.
No more torture about. Man.
The kind I just described to you is conducted in what people call weird societies, Western, educated, industrial, rich, and democratic. There's not a lot of research in impoverished countries. It's just not, there's no research, there's no places to do it or support to do it. So the tremendous amount of research comes from some countries like the United States, Europe, Australia, Japan. And in the coming years, more and more will come, of course, from China and India, South America and Africa, probably after that. Now, it happens that the countries that produce a lot of the research are the countries that, when people study societal attitudes towards individuality versus sort of fitting in, the United States, parts of Europe, Australia, are in the extreme in the world in emphasizing individuality. In fact, the United States is seen as a fantastic outlier among other cultures. Maybe Canada's close. And here's a model that social psychologists talk about. And it's a very simple story in a way, but and certainly it's averaging across lots of people. So a trouble with cultural psychology, which is where we're at now, you can do one of two things. You can say culture doesn't matter, which we think is probably unlikely, right? Cultures are huge. The culture of your home, your community.
I will be real. I still have to process what we were talking about the last segment. Yeah, I don't need to. Or nobody needs to delve deeper what it means. I think if you need any particular clue, we're in the right place, doing the right thing, thinking about the exact same type of stuff that happens here. Let's say like that. It transitions literally you and me, what we are hearing. And to a degree that is surprisingly important. So I can't simply move on as the guy suggested. So yeah. I said before, I have to do other stuff. As always, in reality, I have to. So I put it off here instead of putting it off later on. Because also, as I said, I have still to think about that, man. Like, anyways, no words added. That no more definitions needed. I hope it is understandable. But yeah, man, like, it will be crazy to say it. It feels so wrong to mention that, like, images, let's say like that, images and how things are presented to us. They are certainly interesting, I guess. So yeah, I don't know. They are of some value, of some sort of potentiality that we are not even aware of. They are. Certainly they are. Man. And how much they are that we are not even aware of that. But yeah, that's that's it. That's it. No. That is. It feels like a hit directly into the head, like a. Wait, how much are you doing the same thing here? Directly hook to the chin, like, let's see if you are failing under the same type of conditioning. Man. But anyways, yeah. I will have to think about it. I will need to leave to think about it. Wow. I I I, I guess it was an useful lesson after I don't know, after 23 or so lessons. This is certainly one of the heaviest ones. I didn't expect that. I wouldn't have even tried to predict what's going to happen. Like, it goes hard, let's say. And it hits. Get it out. So yeah. Anyways, man, this thing of being alive, you know. Yeah, I don't know how to wrap it up properly. So let me completely ignore the elephant in the room. Let's do that. Um, that is better than to even try to acknowledge its existence. So the point is, people, uh, had a good time. We certainly had a good time. So yeah, that's everything. Like, basically, that's that's it. Some homework to do, I guess. But yeah, everything. It has been a pleasure. It has been one of the most entertaining. So yeah, I hope it was good. I hope dogs. Wow, wow, wow. Uh, okay, they shut up. Anyways, so I was saying, I hope it was good. I hope it was to some degree interesting. But we need a break, man. We we need to take a tiny break until I was going to say tomorrow. I don't know truly. It will be that I will live tomorrow. I will see. I will have to organize myself around that. I will try to see. I don't even know. I am working towards something. Probably if there is any interest in now in particular knowing what is it that I am working on, please come here to this place called Discord because there is where I am posting most of the updates. I mean, all of them in reality. So yeah. Anyways, we will see if I organize myself properly. Tomorrow there will be a stream. If I don't, think that will probably not happen because I also have to other stuff. Um, Friday stream. Anyways, yeah. Regardless, thanks for it. But we need to wrap it up. Let me. I have already found something. I was just closing it in. I put I put I put the link of the video, not a real username. Yeah. Um, okay, that it is now for real. Thank you. Sorry for making it so long. So anyway, sorry. So I was trying to say, thanks for everything, people. It has been a pleasure being here. It's tough to think out, I guess. Man, what a nice thing. But anyways, yeah. Until the next one. Thanks for everything. Please remember to be happy. Remember to keep yourself safe. Remember to rest, to hydrate, to eat, to do all the responsibilities that you need to do. And whenever we can, we're getting back here doing something. Um, in reality, that something is probably finishing this lecture because there is like a quarter of that left to deal with. So yeah, and until then, um, have a good one. And even if it doesn't happen that we see ourselves again, at the very least to enjoy doing this, and that is what matters the most. So thanks for all. But anyways, because the most important thing is not that, but rather that we are living, we're going into not important sake, doing Sakusa Zero, playing the game. I don't know if he's playing it for the first time or not. So yeah, anyways, we are going there, people. Thanks for all. Have a good one, and see you or not. At least. Yeah. Did you want to hear the message? Vtubers